My name is Loretta Cravens. I have the honor of being the president of the Knoxville Bar Association this year, and to welcome you to this most esteemed occasion, esteemed, perhaps dreaded for some of us. I do want to recognize some of our special guests that are with us today to enjoy this retirement celebration and the portrait unveiling for Justice Sharon Lee. Chief Justice Roger Page, Justice Jeff Bivens, Justice Holly Kirby, Justice Sarah Campbell, Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals Mike Swinney, Court of Appeals Judges John McClarity, Christy Davis, Jeffrey Usman, and Thomas Frierson, Court of Criminal Appeals Judges Tim Easter, Robert Montgomery, Kyle Hickson, Tom Greenholtz, and Matt Wilson, Senior Judge Kelly Thomas, our Claims Commission Judge Bill Young, Knox County Chancellors John Weaver, Bud Armstrong, and Chris Hagerty, Knox County Circuit Court Judges Bill Ayler, Debbie Stevens, Criminal Court Judges Hector Sanchez and Steve Sword, the Honorable Zach Walden, Criminal Court Judge of Campbell County, Knox County Juvenile Court Judge Tim Irwin, General Sessions Court Judge Chuck Cerny, retired Judge Don Elledge of Anderson County, retired Judge Mary Beth Leibowitz, the Knox County Criminal Court, United States District Court Judge Thomas Varlin, United States Bankruptcy Court Judge Suzanne Bachnight, United States Magistrate Judges Cynthia Wyrick and Jill McCook, TBI Director David Roush, the Director of the Administrative Office of the Courts Michelle Long, and former Director Deborah Tate, Knoxville City Law Director Charles Swanson, Knoxville City Municipal Judge John Rawson, Knox County Clerk and Master Scott Griswold, Attorney General Herbert Slattery, the Ambassador to Poland and former Mayor Victor Ashe, and the UT College of Law Dean Lonnie Brown, and Duncan School of Law Dean Matt Lyon. If we missed you, that's my fault. I'm sorry. But please let me extend a special welcome to all of our members of the judiciary, dignitaries, and elected officials. Thank you for being here with us today. Before I forget, immediately following this ceremony, there will be a reception out in the hallway, jointly sponsored by the Knoxville Bar Association and the East Tennessee Lawyers Association. For women, we ask you to stop and enjoy and celebrate along with Justice Lee. So please join us. Now, briefly, I was asked to give some remarks to talk about the impact Justice Lee has had on the legal community here in Knoxville. And I've agonized for about 48 hours about what to say, how little to say, because we could all talk all day. So I pulled out my seersucker, which unfortunately doesn't fit quite as well as the last time that I pulled it out of the closet. So my apologies for not being able to follow the dress code. We'll work on that. And I couldn't really narrow it down to one or two things that would illustrate the impact that Justice Sharon Lee has had on the legal community here in Knoxville and East Tennessee and throughout our state. So I kept thinking about an adage that I've heard once, and it says you should never meet your heroes. Because if you meet your heroes, they just might disappoint. So I thought I would tell you a little story about how I met Justice Lee for the very first time, then just barely Court of Appeals Judge Sharon Lee in 2004, and she will not remember this story. I was a brand new baby lawyer, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how I fit in the legal community. I was terrified in General Sessions Court, which was the only court that I was permitted to appear in by myself at that point in time. And I really didn't know how to learn about our bar other than I had begun to get involved with the KBA. And I met Sharon Lee on the sidewalk on Market Street, just a couple of blocks that way. I'm guessing she was going to lunch. And it was myself and another young lawyer. And she introduced herself and told us about a bar meeting that she was going to. And I was in awe because I had just met a Court of Appeals judge. And to be a judge in our profession, you must be superior, certainly, to a brand new lawyer and to most lawyers in order to achieve that goal. Well, she directed me to that meeting, and I didn't think I could say no, so I went, and I got involved with that bar organization, which was ETLA, and stayed involved with the bar, and always tried to sort of follow the example of Justice Lee. I was honored when she was named to the Supreme Court a few years later, and I realized that the best thing about meeting your heroes is that sometimes they are not only brilliant lawyers, brilliant judges whose dissents I've quoted from many times, in addition to the majority opinions she's authored, but are people who truly lead with a servant's heart. And that's the lesson that I think that you have most imbued into our legal community. You have served lawyers, litigants, the cause of justice, and the development of the law in Tennessee. You have been as down to earth a human being as I have ever met when I had no right to ask for your time. And I've seen many, many others, probably most of the people in this room, have a similar experience. So thank you. We know you have left a mark. You can look around this room and see so many lawyers. I see some people nodding who have looked to you as an example of pulling yourself out of a small town, making a name, coming to a slightly larger town in Knoxville, making a name, and then making a mark for the entirety of our state. And Tennessee is better for you having served. So thank you. I look forward to hearing some more stories, and if you want to catch me on the sidewalk and share some at some point, please do. But please join me in congratulating Justice Lee on a career well served. And next we will hear from the president of ETLA, Anna Swift, for some more, hopefully, stories about Justice Lee.
But by the grace of God. This is an expression I've heard Justice Lee use on more than one public gathering when I've heard her speak, and it's one that has really stuck with me all these years. To Justice Lee, this expression means that, but by the grace of God, she herself could have been in a disadvantaged position, the one across the bench, the one pleading for legal relief. To me, the expression is such a beautiful sentiment because it shows just how truly humble Justice Lee is and how cognizant she is of her role as a public servant. In fact, Justice Lee has been dubbed a justice for the people and a trailblazer and a champion for women. Very fitting titles, don't you think? Now, in my mind, there's no question that Justice Lee is someone who strives to make a positive impact for as many people as she can, women and men alike, and for those who need it the most, whether it's through her promotion of Tennessee's access to justice movement or her advocacy for the equitable treatment of women in the law. So speaking of women in the law, it should come as no surprise that Justice Lee was the first female ever appointed to the Eastern Section of the Tennessee Court of Appeals back in 2004. She is also the longest-serving member of the Tennessee Supreme Court, and therefore the longest-serving female member of the Tennessee Supreme Court, having been appointed back in 2008. Interestingly, when Justice Lee joined the court had its first female majority for its first time in our state's history. What an honor. Now, ETLA is very proud of these accomplishments and very proud to be associated with Justice Lee, who has been an ETLA member since 2005. In fact, she served as our fearless president from 2007 to 2008, and then a few years later, she won our very prestigious Spirit of Justice Award, our highest award that is given to a member who has clearly demonstrated advancement and support for women in the legal profession and for the mission of ETLA. And I understand that what Justice Lee most wishes to be remembered for is for being a role model for women lawyers and for someone who has contributed to their empowerment as well as encouraged them to pursue their dreams. And so I'm very happy to report that, yes, Justice Lee, you are absolutely known among the at-law membership as a very positive and inspiring role model for women lawyers. She is known as an encourager, a mentor, a friend, an influencer, someone who does not require fanfare to show devotion to her cause. Justice Lee is truly held in the high esteem of so many and has received so many awards and accolades, too many for me to mention, and all for good reason. So as an example, she was recently described in this way. Back when Justice Lee was practicing, she was always kind and considerate, even in an adversarial situation. She was an outstanding example of how a female lawyer could navigate the legal system in the late 1980s. Since she has been on the bench, she has been a role model to so many female lawyers. And those are the kind words of a current at-law member. Now, maybe it's just a mark of my generation, but I myself am personally uber impressed that Justice Lee has more than 3,000 followers on Twitter. Wow. And I have to say, I really, really admire her personal tenacity and sense of conviction in writing dissenting opinions when she has felt that another viewpoint needed to be expressed aside from the majority opinion. So Justice Lee, on behalf of at-law, we're so glad that you left pre-med all those years ago to join the law, and we're absolutely honored to be able to celebrate this important special day and all of your accomplishments for women and the law. May your retirement be everything you could have ever hoped for and that much more. So thank you all for listening, and also happy upcoming Women's Equality Day this Saturday, the 26th. And so now we will turn to our Chief Justice, Roger A. Page, for his remarks.
Thank you, Anna, for those remarks. We want to thank Anna for her service to the judiciary. She worked for Judge Bob a couple of years. He still brags on it. Thank you, brother. I'm honored to be here today to talk about Justice Lee. Her service to the judiciary is unparalleled. Her accomplishments, as Anna told us some of them, there are so many we just can't go over all. She was the first woman on the Eastern Section, the third woman on the Court of Appeals, period. And she was the fifth woman on the Tennessee Supreme Court, the third to serve as Chief Justice. And she was chief when I became a justice on the court. She was very nice to me, helping me in my transition to the court. She has, the life before that, she was an attorney for many years. We won't say how many, but she served as county attorney, city attorney. She started her judicial career as a municipal judge. In fact, the award that's given to the most outstanding municipal judge in Tennessee each year is called Sharon G. Lee Award for Excellence. She's been a tireless advocate for women. All of you know that. She also has helped out a few young men along the way. We appreciate that. When I first got on the Supreme Court, as I said, she welcomed me, and she has written a lot of opinions. I had one of my law firm's Google research. We came up with over 150 on the Court of Appeals, 174 on the Supreme Court, and there were about 45 separate opinions on the call. Some of them were again dissenting, and there were a few that were just outright dissents. On several occasions when I would send around one of my opinions, she'd call me in a few days and tell me it was a very good opinion, well-researched, well-written. And then she'd talk about something else, like how the law's going to do this weekend. By the way, I love coming to Knoxville, Tennessee football game, half forward, talking to Charlie Swanson about the San Francisco Giants. But Sharon would always come back toward the end of the conversation and she'd say something like this. Now, you know I'm going to have to dissent. As we say in the country, she comes from good stock. mother served for about 38 years as the clerk of the master of Monroe County. She also served on the county court, which is called Sharon's father served in World War II. He was in the Army Air Corps and was a pilot. And he was shot down over Germany and spent a year as a prisoner of war. And I'm pretty proud of my father. But after the war, like so many of that generation, he came home, married, had a family, and went about his business and never complained. And he actually served as county bishop himself. Those of you who know me know I like to tell stories. So I'm going to tell one or two before we sit down. But, West Tennessee, we had a bank president, served town close to Rock for many years, and some of the younger men on board the bank board of directors decided that it was time for a woman to be on the board. So they went to his son and asked him, how should we go about this? And his son said, don't ask him. He'll say no. He said, just show up with your new director and tell him that she's going to be on the board and she has votes. So they took his advice. When they came, they walked into the boardroom and he sat, looked for a minute, and finally went up and said, this is our new director and she has votes. He didn't say anything to me. Finally, he said, it's about time to come on in here. So I looked around this boardroom and these portraits. That reminded me of that story. It's about time that we have a woman in here. And I happened to see her. Looks like a lady. In the program, I noticed what she said when she was sworn in as Chief Justice. I promise to make you proud. You have done that. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you for all of this mentoring. And I'm just honored to be here. Thank you all for coming. It's my privilege to ask you to introduce Bud Lewis. Oh, is it out of order now? I'll do whatever you say. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Justice Page. On behalf of the Tennessee Bar Association and all the attorneys across the state of Tennessee, Justice Lee, I want to thank you for your many years of service. And on a personal note, I just want to be brief, but I will tell you, as a person who's been retired for 4 years, the best is ahead of you. So congratulations. And thank you.
I assume you've yielded your time.
I did.
I have this instinct to request 2 minutes for rebuttal. That wouldn't be appropriate, would it? Thank you so much, Jim. As y'all may know, Debbie and some others know, I was very fortunate to call Senator Howard Baker my law partner and mentor and my friend, especially photographic friend. Of course, he was much better. And I savored every moment that I could spend with Senator Baker. Well, this was his favorite story for an occasion like this. So he's been in the Senate, he's been majority leader, minority leader. He has sponsored and helped pass the Clean Air Act with Senator Muskie. He's been Reagan's chief of staff. He's been the ambassador to Japan, but now he's back in Huntsville where he's happy and where he's getting some rest. And he's sitting there and he's got his grandson on the floor and he's got a fire going, but he's watching the news, and sure enough, this story comes on about Watergate. It's the winter, so it's not the right time for that, but it's a story about Watergate. And of course, every story about Watergate has to have Senator Baker saying, well, did the president know, and when did he know it? Well, they finish the story, and it's loud, obnoxious commercial. I know you've never seen one of those, but a loud, obnoxious commercial comes on the TV. Senator Baker hits the mute button. Grandson crawls over to him, puts one hand on his left knee, one hand on his right knee, and says with big eyes, Granddaddy, are you somebody that used to be somebody? Just saying, okay? Get ready, but you'll love it. In my view, no one can understand the somebody that Sharon became without knowing about her mom. and knowing about her dad. And of course, she just lost her mom a few weeks ago. Judy was the clerk and master in Monroe County for 38 years. And Sharon was a rugrat in that courthouse. I got leave of court. Sharon watched the legal system from that low perch and decided she wanted to be a part of it. And her mom told her, you're no better or worse than anyone else. So if you want to do it, give it your all, but don't you dare quit. Pretty good advice. Her dad, of course, as has been said, wasn't just any old aviator. He was a remarkable, legendary aviator who cheated death several times because his colleagues, his fellow aviators, saved him, and even one German pilot. So when Charles got back to Monroe County, he was just glad to be in Monroe County in one piece. But he returned with a crystal clear vision of what's important in life. See, I think Tennesseans like Sharon's mom and dad taught their daughter by example what we might call quiet courage. Quiet courage isn't arrogant. Quiet courage isn't foolish. It's just a confidence of knowing that come what may, things will work out if you keep a hold of your values. And here in Knoxville, we observe that Sharon's values are often laced with the values from our beloved volunteer creed. Because in the Lee family, they were taught to shadow themselves to give light to others. Women got the right to vote 75 years before Sharon took her first year classes at what our beloved Don Payne always called the college. Nevertheless, in 75, this young lady from Madisonville wasn't really supposed to go to law school. She wasn't really supposed to succeed when she left her uncle's firm. Certainly not to become municipal judge, and Lord have mercy, not to become chief justice, or to establish a business court, or to champion electronic filing, or along with her colleagues to beat back efforts to politicize the court in 2014. But she did. So when I say quiet courage, I mean she was willing to show up and try her best, just like Judy taught her, no matter the outcome. Well, looks like her best was pretty darn good because she got that Drowoda Award from the Tennessee Bar, right, Jim? She got that multiple distinguished alumni awards from Webb and UT, right, Dean? She was supposed to get, she wasn't supposed to get, but she did get the Barker Award from Legal Aid of East Tennessee, the Abota Courage Award, the YWCA's Remarkable Women Award, and she did, and she did, and she did. So how do you explain this ascent from Monroe County rugrat to a decorated Tennessee Supreme Court justice? I say quiet courage. And students, listen up, because her core values are also those of our profession: equal access to justice, the rule of law, and a fair and impartial judiciary. And I tell you one more thing she had going for her. She had some great role models. She had some great role models. She's talking about her as a role model, but she had role models, and she had role models in the audience that we're picking up on live stream. You think role models are important? Well, Sharon has come to our Lawyers as Leaders leadership class at the College of Law every year since Doug Blades and I began about a decade ago. She talks about life balance as a 4-burner gas stove. She talks about failure. She talks about how you can succeed in the midst of failure, not to be afraid of failure, to understand that failure leads to more lessons. And she talks about being purposeful, about leaving your legacy. Here's some comments from our students over the years. Quote, as a young woman from rural West Tennessee, I now know I can hold my own. Quote, basically, she seems like the American dream on 2 feet. Quote, I never thought a Caucasian lady from the home of Benton's Country Ham could move and inspire an African-American gay man from New York. And he finished by saying, but she is so real. And then my all-time personal favorite, who knew that Mary Tyler Moore lived in Madisonville? You're gonna make it after all, okay? They did sing with me, Melinda. Finally, she's been part of a court, an entire court, a unanimous court that's made a steadfast commitment, unparalleled in these United States, in my view, to equal access to justice. Sharon understands. Now hear this. Sharon understands that pro bono work is not as much of an opportunity for the client as it is the lawyer. Sharon understands the problems of working people. Here's what she said when we were here for her investiture in 2014. Quote, with the rising cost of legal services, more people cannot afford our legal system. We cannot risk doing nothing. We cannot hope the access to justice problem will go away because it never will. We can't afford to fail in place. Fail in place? I think not. Because since our court has created its Access to Justice Commission in April of 2009, the number of lawyers doing some pro bono in this state has tripled. The number of pro bono hours being worked by volunteer lawyers in this state has doubled. But we most definitely haven't failed in place, but sure enough, we have miles to go. Miles and miles to go. If you look at that program, look at the back of the program, you'll see what she said to us. When our friend was here with us last time, the last thing she said in her speech was, I promise to make you proud. I'd say she did that and then some. The next speaker. The next speaker. Must have been you plowing the field for me, Charles. The next speaker is my friend Celeste Herbert of Herbert, Meadows, and Wall.
Good afternoon. I'm always nervous when I come into this courtroom because I can remember the first time that I came in here with Don Payne and Justice, or not Justice, but Judge Taylor was on the bench. And I was a frightened young lawyer who had sweaty palms, and I think I've got those sweaty palms again today with this audience. My Apple Watch has told me that my heart rate is increasing. I'm here as a fellow lawyer to Justice Lee, but I'm also here as a friend. We've been great friends, and we were friends by virtue of the fact that we had daughters in the same class at Webb School. And we went through those trials and tribulations of being working moms together. I've always appreciated her friendship. She is as real as they get. I'm so happy to think that Justice Lee's portrait is going to hang in this courtroom because it's going to be a message for generations to come. It is fitting that the unveiling of this portrait coincides almost to the day of the 103rd anniversary of the ratification of women getting the right to vote. We've come a long way in 103 years. We've come from being a nation where women fought for the vote, for the right to vote, to a nation where more women vote in elections than men. A nation where women sit on the highest courts in this nation, and where women serve in positions of leadership on the local, state, and national levels. However, women cannot become complacent, and we must continue to be vigilant about women's rights, civil rights, and human rights. Justice Lee was finishing her law school as I was starting. And when we were in law school, we didn't have female mentors. And today, women dominate the law school admissions. Buck was telling me about the superstars in his class that are women. We were educated to be attorneys, but no one taught us how to juggle careers and family. There was no script to follow. We just did it. Justice Lee and I both have daughters, granddaughters, and grandsons. And I know that we both share the profound desire that our granddaughters grow up in a world where they're valued as much as our grandsons, are paid as much as our grandsons, and who are judged by the same criteria as our grandsons. Speaking of that next generation, Justice Lee's grandchildren will shortly unveil her portrait, which will hang in this courtroom for many years to come. She's the first woman to have her portrait in this room, and that portrait will inspire generations to come. That portrait has power, and just its presence in this room will communicate the contributions of Justice Lee to the court, to our profession, and to the citizens of the state of Tennessee. I'm guessing that most people in this audience have heard of Harry Potter and have read the books and maybe seen the movies. Those books and movies feature talking portraits, and I've often wondered what Justice Lee's portrait would say to those who view it when they come along. And I'm not going to say everything that I think it would say. I think her portrait, if she was speaking through it, would say, be of service to others and share your light with others. I think she would say that when you get involved with organizations or projects, to roll up your sleeves and really work hard. We both served on boards, and when Justice Lee gets involved in a board or a project, she devotes her time and energy to it. She's not just a name that's sitting there as a placeholder. Her service creating the business court, her service as the Supreme Court's liaison to the Alternate Dispute Resolution Commission, or attending Girls State, and her service to countless other groups and organizations, I think would be something that she would like to communicate if her portrait could speak. I think she would say, be yourself at all times, no matter who you are, who you're with, or where you are. Except that I think we have a few exceptions to that rule. I think she would say, don't be afraid to disagree or dissent, but do it civilly, as she has done. I think she would say, work hard, because hard work pays off, as demonstrated by her illustrious career. She would say in her portrait, dream big, because someday those dreams can come true. And I think she would say, be kind to others and yourself. I think as women, a lot of times we're our harshest critics, and I think we need to be better to ourselves. And I think the last thing that her portrait would like to communicate is wear seersucker. It is now my pleasure to introduce Justice Lee's grandchildren, Shep, Julia, and Grace, to unveil her portrait.
Okay, it's still standing. That's a relief. I wasn't sure how that was going to work. Thank you. Well, it is so good to see all of you here today, and I am honored by your presence. And what a great sea of seersucker I'm looking out at today. Thank you for joining me on this journey and being part of my team. Some of you were with me when I was growing up in Madisonville. Some of you joined me at UT Knoxville and later at UT Law School. More of you walked along beside me as I practiced law and later became a judge. All of you have made important contributions to my life. I'm grateful for your friendship, your kindness, your wise counsel, and your support over the years. I want to introduce you to my family. They're seated up here. My daughter Sarah, her husband Wayne, and their daughters Julia and Grace. Girls wave. And my daughter Laura and husband Tyler, and their son Shepherd. Shepherd, can you wave? Yeah, okay. We've been really well behaved today. I'm looking forward to spending more Mimi time with these three and spoiling them even more than I do now. My sister, Reverend Charlotte Shervikoff, is here, and her husband, Lee Shervikoff. I'm glad to have them. My cousin, James Lee, and his mom, Patrice, and Bill Mentier. Thank you all for being here. In my humble opinion, I have the best office staff of anybody over here. I'm bragging here, but I think I've got the best. My longtime administrative assistant, Shelley Ward, Shelley, and good friend, Shelley has done her absolute best to keep me organized and on track and not making too many mistakes. She is the best proofreader and editor in the business, a great friend, and I could not have done my job without her. Thank you, Shelley. And I've worked with some great law clerks over the past 19 years, and some of them are here today. Stephanie, I see you. And I'm grateful to my current clerks, Tyler Ring and Matt Gerdeman, for getting me across the finish line. Any judge knows how important law clerks are, and I've been really blessed. To my colleagues on the Supreme Court, thank you for being here today. To our judges on the Court of Appeals, Court of Criminal Appeals, our trial court judges, all of you, I'm honored by your presence. You've taught me a lot, and I'm just honored to have worked with you. I can say with absolute confidence that we have the best judiciary anywhere in the country. Chief Justice Page, thank you for your leadership, your friendship, and your kind remarks today. As I was sitting there listening to these speakers, I'm thinking, I won't be at my funeral, but I feel like I've heard what I would hear at my funeral, so this is kind of cool. I don't know. Buck and Celeste, you all are the best of the best in the profession. We go back to UT Law School days. We've shared a commitment to access to justice, to mediation, solar eclipse parties, and a love of all things Big Orange, Go Vols. I appreciate y'all more than you know. Thank you. And Loretta and Anna, thank you for your leadership in the KBA and at law. You're great role models, and I really enjoyed your remarks today. And Jim, thank you for being here on behalf of the 18,000 TBA, over 18,000 TBA members that you lead. Thank you for your leadership and your service. And Marsha, where's Marsha Watson? Marsha, yeah. Marsha, as you all know, the executive director of the KBA, Marsha Watson, helped pull all this together, and she's incredible. And she issued the seersucker directive. So if you agree with that, that's her. If you didn't have seersucker, but now you're going to go buy it, that's Marsha. Marsha's retiring in December, and I'm just glad I'm leaving before her. She is so amazing. I could not have done this without her. I first entered this courtroom in 1978 as a young lawyer, much like Celeste mentioned, appearing before the Honorable Robert L. Taylor, United States District Court Judge. Judge Taylor could make the bravest and most experienced lawyers shake and tremble. John Gill, would you say an amen to that? He certainly had that effect on me, and I'm glad times have changed. This room can still make you a little nervous, but it's nothing like walking in front of Judge Taylor. The portrait here is of me, but this is not about me. Anyone who entered this courtroom before today might look at these walls and think only men can be judges and justices. And it is time we change that message. I I'm honored to have been the first woman to serve as in East Tennessee, to serve as Chief Justice since our state was created in 1796. Somebody had to be first, and I could not let this opportunity pass. And I wanted this to happen during the anniversary month of the ratification of the 19th Amendment 103 years ago today. And as sometimes I'm prone to say in speeches regarding the 19th Amendment, we've come a long way, baby. And we have come a long way, baby. And one sign of that is seeing women in the judges section here, which makes me very happy. But we still have a ways to go. And while I may be the first woman to have a portrait on this wall, I will not be the last. I promise I won't be the last. There will be other women who, by virtue of serving as Chief Justice or Chief Judge, will have that distinction. And it does not need to take another 227 years for another portrait of a woman to hang. Serving in the Tennessee judiciary has been the honor of a lifetime. As a small-town country lawyer, I never saw this as a possibility. But we live in a great state and country where things you can't even dream about can become reality. I'm happy that my portrait will hang alongside some of my great mentors. Judge Charles Susano Jr. was one of my best friends and always gave me the very best advice. And I'm glad his sons Stephen and Charles are here today. And I'm glad I'm going to be right beside Charlie because I'm probably still going to need to ask him things. Justice, I got great advice from Judge Franks and Justice Barker, Judge Tipton, and Judge Wade, and they were great. They encouraged me and mentored me as well, and I'm just happy to be we'll be happy to be on the wall with them. One of my very first early cases on the Court of Appeals, I was sitting with Judge Franks, and a case involved a tanning bed. And Judge Franks didn't understand how this woman fell out of a tanning bed, right? And he kept asking all these questions. I think he thought it was like a bed you sleep in. And I finally sent him a note, and I said, I'll explain tanning beds to you after court. Let's just go ahead. Judge Sweetie, you were probably on that case. And he passed me this little note, and he said, "This is why we needed you on this court." And I thought, okay, whatever it took, I'm here. So as I close out this chapter of my life, I am filled with gratitude and a mix of emotions. I have warm memories of friendships and experiences, hope for the future, and a sense of accomplishment of all that we achieved together. I know I always tried to do my best, and I have a clear conscience that I decided cases without fear or favor and did what I thought the law required. You may not always have agreed with me, but I hope you were never disappointed in my effort. I believe we have the best legal system anywhere in the world. The rule of law, which protects our rights and liberties, must be preserved and defended. And everyone who comes into any court deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. All are entitled to equal justice without regard to their ability to pay, their race, their gender, or any other characteristics. We must remain committed to seeing that everyone has meaningful access to our system of justice. Thank you for allowing me to do this important work. And since I would rather talk with you than to you, I'm going to close and say thank you, God bless. And I'll ask the greatest appellate court clerk of all time, who I call the GOAT, but I want to explain why I call him the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time. Jim Hibner, to please adjourn court. Let the party start.
All rise in honor of this.